Alright guys, so now we are trying to start coupling or sewing, right? Now, like I said, in as much as I hemmed this shirt fabric on top, I folded this edge and this edge. I folded it very well before I hemmed on top. Now the center wasn't folded, it was placed directly. As you can see, the rough edge is showing properly. The reason of this is because of the chest flap we be laying on top and then to cover the rough edges. So there's no need for you to fold here when you know you're going to put a chest flap here. But in the case whereby you're making shoulder zip, that's if you're not going to have any flap placed on top here, then you are now allowed to fold here and then finish here properly. But because I have a chest flap, that's the reason I'm not hemming, I'm not folding this center fold, right? So now I will start sewing. So you sew from here all through to this edge, all through, and then you're now going to sew on the shirt fabric material on top. Automatically, once you sew here, the down one will be taken care of. So guys, so now I'm sewing from here. Please make sure as you're sewing tip to tip, right? Tip to tip of your placed material, tip to tip. So at the tip, it makes your sewing look very nice. Now, in as much as there is no fold in here, I will just sew it as well in order just to hold it. Then I want to sew it from the angle where I can go all right round without having to cut my threads before I finish. I end my sewing. So I'm sewing on the part of the shirt, right? Now automatically the white piece will be held together because the white piece is small, so small that whatever you saw on the top we hold the one on the right. Then I'm also sewing from here. Then make sure you take your time to arrange your materials. If you want to do similar style, this is going to help you to at least have a broader view of how something like this is done. And as well, make sure you make use of the appropriate gum or interfacings in your sewing so that you will not have issues with thickness of fabric while sewing, right? Because if you use the wrong gum at the wrong places, the finishing can never be the same. So right here I'm done guiding the edges, right? So after the edges, so now you cut your threads. After the guiding the edges, you cut your threads, right? Now this is how it is. Now it's now time for me. I will now go and fold this cloth into 2 equal parts to get the center line before I know where to slit from for my chest flap attachment. So guys, I have ironed the center. As you can see, I have gotten the center line. So the next thing you will do now is to fold into 2 equal parts this way, right? Fold into 2 equal parts this way. After you must have gotten your center fabric, then from the center fold, that from the neck area, you mark 9 inches down depending on your customer's measurement. But now the guideline you are going to use to mark this, because now I want the opening here to be longer than 7 so that you will be able to put 3 buttons, because chest flap is usually good with 3 buttons, right? So if you mark at 7, it's still all right, but then I want to mark at 9 so that I will have enough room to come up so that the customer's head will enter properly without much stress. So I mark at 9, or you can use 8 to mark, whichever one you want to do is still all right. You mark at 8 or 9, right? Then when you mark at that point, then you cut it from here this way, that from the up downwards, right? From the up side you go downwards. Now this cutting must be half an inch inside. Then after you must have cut out at that point, then you hold the fabric properly. Then you cut out a certain inch here, that's something less than 1/4 inch. Just cut it out. Now the reason for you to do this is to make sure that the chest flap is sitting properly and they're relaxing properly without having to have excesses or spill over to the other side. So you cut this out, and then once you get to this stage, if you can see what I've cut out, look at how small it is. Now let me place my tape so that you get to know the exact width you are going to cut out from. This is what I have cut out now. So placing my tape now, I'm seeing 0.3 or 0.3, right? It's very small, so 0.3. So this is what you might likely cut out from your fabric. Then after you must have done this now, you open it up this way, right? So in opening it up this way, look at, it's 0.3, right? It's not up to half an inch. So now you have done this now. Now this is the stage you all might be well interested with. Now the next thing you will do is to start joining. Now don't forget that you are going to start with the smallest flap first. That's the flap that is small in folding and in cutting. Now you take up your smallest flap, cross check the smallest flap first. This is the smallest one we have, right? Then the part that has the part that you folded this way will be left this way. Now you are going to start sewing from the other part. Now you place it inwards this way. Watch where I'm placing the bigger part of it, not the smaller part. This is bigger part. I'm placing from inside. Now like I said, you can reduce the length of the flap to your choice. So you place from inside this way, you place from inside this way, then you are going to sew from there less than half inch, something quarter inch or thereabouts. So you sew from this part. Make sure you attach the smallest flap first. That's the one on your left hand side first. You attach this way, then make sure is evenly positioned or held. Then sew from here. Once you get to that place, you have a notching, like you have that notching effect. If you get to that point you have a notching effect. Then you stitch. Don't exceed or surpass that point. You stitch it properly. Now once you have stitched it properly, you cut your threads as well. Then after you must have cut your threads this way, then you fling the flap outside this way, right? You fling the flap outside this way, right? Then when you must have done that, you can now close or stitch. Then before you stitch, I normally make sure that the flap is positioned properly how it should. Then how then do you do that? Make sure you bring it out this way, and then the edge of this flap should not exceed the center fold. It should not exceed the center fold, this part. Then you make sure that the center of this material is placed at the center of the fabric this way, because the other one way is going to come to lay on top, right? Then you push in or tuck in the excesses. Then if you notice, you have a V mark in here or a V notch in here. That V notching, you bend it downwards. It's very ideal you do this so that it will give you a neat finishing at the inside. Then you remove excess threads if there's any, right? Then when you must have done this now, you can now decide to cut this stuff somewhere here, right? Now make sure that your cutting is exceeding the point that has the notching effect. Then once you hold it this way, then you can now start from here to start locking or closing your flap. Now make sure you also sew tip to tip of your flap as well. This tip to tip gives you a perfect finishing or sewing. Make sure the under is properly aligned or aligning. Then you sew from here. Then make sure it's going tip to tip. You sew from here. Arrange the material properly before you finish, before you start sewing rather. Then you sew from here. So as you're sewing, make sure it's being held properly as well. Then once you have finished sewing that part, now that serves you for your the smaller chest flap. Look at how it came out. Look at the finishing, right? This is how it should be. After you have done this now, don't forget that before you must have done this, you must gum this region that you're going to put this chest flap on, because if you don't gum it, you will not have a nice result. This region must be gummed as well, right? Now the gumming should be at least 2 inches bold on the center of the fabric before you do your notchings or your cuttings, right? So now, after you must have done that, the next thing you will do now is to put the bigger flap or the bigger material. Alright guys, so now in the other flap as well, the fixing as well, the same thing you did on the other one is still the same thing you're going to repeat or replicate on the next one, right? Now everything you're doing, make sure they are corresponding as planned or as it should. So you also start sewing from the bigger part. Don't fold sew from here. From the bigger part, hold it this way, hold this way, and then you sew from this end, right? So you start sewing, right? Then make sure everything is properly held. So I had to change the camera position to enable me see clearly. So you sew from here inside, right? Then less than 0.5, right? That's half inch. That's half inch. You can sew 1/4. Then you sew from here. Now once you have gotten to this stage, make sure you also stop at that same point. The notching effect is the same process or procedure you use in the first one. Don't exceed that point, right? Then you cut out the thread as well. Then once you are done doing this, you also turn the flap outward this way. Now make sure everything is properly arranged before you start top stitching on top. Now after you must have done this, now you arrange properly, making sure that the flap is sitting properly how it should sit on the outfit. Make sure all the flaps are corresponding how it should. If you notice any uneven nature, you can start now to correct them before you stitch. Now losing is part of the sewing. Don't feel bad when you lose, rather lose it with happiness and know that next time, note your mistakes so that you will not repeat such mistakes again. So once you have arranged the flaps how you should, then you can now start stitching across it. Now make sure everything is properly arranged as well, and then sew from the tip of the flap. So everything you're doing should be calculated. Don't do anything by assumption, don't do anything by guessing, right? In our tailoring work or fashion work, we don't gaze at this 21st century, because everything is now based on calculations and paying attention to details. So you sew properly. Then the main aim here is to make sure your new line is closing the first one you used in holding the fabric to the flap to the fabric. Then at the neck region, you can cut out the excess flap here. You know, I push the flap to be a bit longer. You can cut it out this way, and then you are going to hold the two pieces of the cloth together while you try tucking in this one. Then if you notice that the one under is bigger or wider and it's not allowing or it's not lapping properly, what you will do is you extend the notch at this point. You extend this notch in here, you cut more, you extend the notching here, that's the notching mark, extend it to enable this to be placed or tucked in properly. But the easiest thing or easiest way you can do this is to make sure that the flap under is so small that the one on top must cover. So once you have done this now, then you are now going to cut out the underneath excesses. Now the reason of doing this is to make sure that while you are trying to sew, you don't have much folding effects under, so that it won't be too strong for your machine or your threading to go across it. Then you make sure that both ends are properly taken care of. Then you sew from here, tucking in excesses at the sides, right? Then you sew from here. Take your time to do this as well. Don't be in a haste to rush it or to finish it or to end it up. Then cut your threads. Then you sew from here, making sure that the flap is positioned at the center of the fabric. That is the essence of the ironing you have done or I have done in my outfit. Then once I get to this stage, you now decide on the length of the flap you want to have. If it's going to be 13 inches, 16 inches, or whatsoever, whatever length you decide to have, that is the length you are going to have. So I want to have a length of 17 in finishing, right? So I will cut at 18 or 17.5, and then such flaps is better done with a V folding. So what you now do is you cut off the underneath excesses as usual, then so that you'll be able to have a nice folding or a nice V mark at the end. So now you might decide not to make V. If you want to make V from the beginning, this collar gum must have been cut in a V shape, but because I did not plan to do V, I just decided to do it now, so it will be too thick for me to fold. So what I will do, I will ignore the V fold. I will just fold it this way, right? I will fold this way because I did not plan to do V from the beginning, but it's advisable to have V fold from the beginning. So V cutting of the collar gum, because that collar gum can be folded double there. So I'm trying to make another type of folding whereby I will have it to be in a square form, but then I will sew in a V shape. Then once you get to this stage, once I've folded, then I'm trying to just replicate a V sewing but not a V folding. Then from that angle, I am sewing towards the center point of the flap. Then once you get to this center point, you pin your needle as well, and then you rotate the fabric this way. Take your time to do this. Then you also try to make sure that your sewing is giving you an exact shape. So you just note where the other one stopped and then bring it out to the other side, and then you also sew in this form. So once you get to this stage now, I have gotten my nature of sewing here. I just want to have it to be in a V-like sewing but not a V folding. Then tuck in the underneath my fabrics properly. Make sure it's properly tucked in, and then don't allow any edge to come out. Then you also sew from here, and then make sure everything is properly aligning or aligned. Sew from here, then make sure it's covering the one under. You sew. Then on arriving or approaching the area that has this notching at the onset, then bend it downwards toward the flap so that it will be tucked in underneath the flap. Please, it's very important. It helps in your finishing. So you lap it properly on top this way, and then you sew as well. So your sewing must exceed or surpass that point. So once you have gotten to that stage, then you can now give it any closure or finishing you want. It might be an X shape, a Z shape, or whatever shape you want to give. So you can give it any shape you want. Now the reason of that sewing is to make sure that that part is properly flattened by your threading. So however shape you want to give it is solely your choice. So I can decide to give it this kind of shape, or this kind of sewing is solely my choice. So as you can see how this part is properly aligning now, and then let me bring it close to the camera so you see the results or the effect, right? Look at how flat it is, and look at how fine it is. So this is for your chest flap. Then we are done with this now. Now if you can see how properly positioned all these things look, right? So I believe you are having a better look now, or a better view now. Look at how it is. Look at the finishing I get there. You can decide to give it whatever shape sewing you want. It's solely your choice. This is how it should be for your chest flap. Now after doing this now, then the pocket I have there, like I said, is a fancy pocket, and which I will show you how to go about it. Then let me bring my pocket. Then like I said, we have another design at the pocket which we are going to run now before we progress. So we are done with the front block, so I will remove this and then file in the pocket aspect of it. Now like I said, I will cut off the threading that are coming out from the fabric. So I'm trying to just give it a decorative stitch from here, right? I'm giving it a decorative stitch. This is optional. You can decide to do this or you might not do it. However you want to do it is solely your choice. So once you have gotten to this stage now, the next thing you will do is to make sure your threading is straight enough, right? Tucking this properly this way. Make sure your threading is straight enough. So once you get to this stage, make sure it's straight enough. Then you cut out the excesses as the case may be. Cut it out, and then also make sure you cut out the threads as the case may be. You might decide to sew it from inside out, but I like top stitching this way. The reason is because inside out sewing might not really give you the perfect finishing you want. So now this will be positioned or placed underneath this part of the buckle, right? The buckle. Then I am going to give a 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch lock in here. Now is to make sure that this buckle is held at a certain position at always. Then I am cutting from here. Then this will be placed on the pocket this way. This will be placed on the pocket this way. Now you might decide to place it on the fabric and this will fling under, or you might decide to relax this solely on the pocket. So however you want to do it is solely your choice, but then I like to make it to stand on its own, meaning I want to lock here a bit. I'm going to lock the both ends, then I will give it a little stitch from here while I bend this way, so that this thing will stand on its own and it will be dangling. I think this is how I want to do my own. You can decide to do yours as you choose, as your choice may be. So I'm going to lock this way, and that is the reason I have it to be on double fold. So I'm pushing the whole threading excesses under this way. I'll push them in, and then I'm stitching from the tip here, right? So you might decide to do your own concepts, but the reason of showing you this is to make sure that you have an idea of how to go about similar works on this. Then I have locked it up this way. I will also sew from here, but because of the buckle I will sew from this other direction so that my machine will not be disturbed by the buckle. Make sure you have a neat finishing. So this is almost going to give us a feeling of like a sandals, right? This is how I want to do mine, right? This is how I want to do mine. So after you must have done this, now the next thing you will do is to place this under this way, and then I will stitch from here. Make sure it's centralized at the center of the pocket, right? Then stitch from here. Now the length should go in a bit, at least 2 inches or 1.5 underneath the real pocket. Then you stitch from here. Like I said, you can decide to do yours anyhow you want it. It's solely your choice. So you cut your thread this way. Now I can also decide to stitch on top here. I will stitch here as well. I also stitch here as well. Then after I must have stitched that point, now this is serving me for the design I so wish to have on my pocket. Then I'll fling this one to come down this way. right, I will fling it to come down this way. So I might just give it a little stitch here just to hold the folded parts properly. You can decide not to stitch. Ironing can also help you do that, but I want to stitch here so that it will be firmly held. Then I have stitched that point. Look at how relaxed it looks now. So now that I have finished sewing this, look at how it is. This is how I want my pocket to be. You can decide to do yours in any form you want. There's no rule guiding your choice of design, but make everything to be meaningful and to be artistic and to be well calculated. Look at how it is. Then this will be held on the outfit itself. Now this will be held on the outfit itself this way, right? Now you can now decide on the pocket depth or position you want. Like I said, you must push out 2 inches. Once you have not joined the back to the front, push out 2 inches, and then the pocket should be 9 inches to 10 inches position. So the pocket will be positioned in this form. Now you and I know that this is not a facing, it's just a fancy. So this material coming on top this place, there's no problem, it's your own creation. So you don't feel bothered having this on top. It's a design, it's a concept. So you have to be able to defend or to know the reason why you are doing anything you are doing. So I'm going to sew the pocket from here all through now and then show you the results. So now let's sew the pocket, right? I like all sewing together, so you see how everything is done. So you must have changed your thread to the color of the pocket. I have changed my thread to white thread now, so you stitch properly as well. Then you sew. All my sewings must be done tip to tip. That's part of the finishing you might be craving for, right? Make sure your stitches are properly balanced. Then you sew as well, tip to tip, right? Make sure it's tip to tip enough. Then you sew from here as well. So when you must have gotten to this stage, you can see the results. The outfit is already looking beautiful even without having finished the joining processes. So this is how your clothes should always look, right? Then this is the pocket aspect of it. Now we are done with the pocket and the front block designing. So the next video you will see now will be on the sleeve sewing and the turn up effect. Now look at the outcome of what we have done. So this is how the outfit will look like, right? Take a very close look at it. See how beautiful it is, right? So now the next video you will see now will be on the sleeve turn up and this filling. So I believe this video will help you to guide you in going about similar sewings. Now the regular sewing effect stands. You now join the shoulders, join the back, or you can still go about doing that so that you will also see the total making procedures. Alright guys, so now we are going to join the back of the outfit to the front. Now don't forget that we have already done the front joining and everything, and then like I said at the first video I posted, which was explaining how the gummings were done, then I believe I have explained how this as well was achieved. Like I said, you must as well thread the end or the edge here. Now the reason for this threading is to hold it firmly. Now even though you must have used hemming gum to hold it, it's just a temporary holding, and then it's a plot to reduce or to remove excess air under that neck inside neck interfacing. Now don't forget that this is a fancy interfacing which can be ignored, but then it's part of your packaging and it's part of your finishing, so it gives you an edge over the regular designers out there. So you must as well make use of a fanciful material to achieve that. Don't use a dull fabric, use a very fanciful material in making such, right? So after you must have done that now, then after you must have held or sewn at the edge, so the next thing you will do now is to fix your label. Now please make sure that branding is part of your work, so you must as well work towards branding. So if you don't have where to get your label done, you can contact me. I will give you a link, or I will help you get your label done at a very cheap rate. I think for 1,000 pieces mine was done for 40k or thereabout. So you can contact me or give me your logo and your brand name. I will help you get your label done within 14 working days. So now after you have done this, now you fold your label into 2 equal parts. This is my personal label, Mr. Redefined Clothing, right? Now you fold your label into 2 equal parts. Then after the folding, the label is positioned at 2.5 to 3 inches down from the neck. So you measure, then place your label at the center of that the center back of your fabric. Then you are meant to sew or hold your label all right round from the edge that way. So you sew from here and hold your label all through, making sure that the label is straight enough both in width and then in length. So once you have gotten to this stage, you know that you are almost done with your clothing, with your sewing. So you sew from here as well. Then always make sure that everything you're sewing must be tip to tip, right? So you sew all through the label. So now you are done fixing your label at the inside outfit, right? Look at the label, look at how I sew tip to tip all through the edge. Now after this, the next thing you will do now is to join the front and the back together. So this is the back piece and this is the front piece. So you place it this way, make sure you hold the two together. Then you take the back facing, please make sure you pick the back facing. Now the right side of the back facing the right side of the front piece this way, then the wrong side of the back piece facing the wrong side of the front piece. Hold them this way. Now you're going to join it at the shoulder by half an inch, right? So after you must have sewn from here, you must hold it this way. Make sure that the 3 pieces must be equal both in length and in width. They must be equal. Then once you hold the 3 pieces together this way, arrange it properly. Don't be in a haste to do this. Then you sew from here half an inch. You can measure if you so desire or so want or wish. So you can measure, then hold the 3 pieces together. They must be even, right? Don't make the mistake of making one to be smaller and one to be longer. So you sew from here, so you must be half an inch or thereabout. Then you sew from that position. Then you sew from here. Make sure the half an inch is maintained from the neck region to the shoulder region. There should be no difference in the half an inch sewing. So once you have done that, now this is how it will look like, right? This is how it will look like. Let's look at how it will look like all through, half an inch all through. Then you repeat the same sewing on the other shoulder as well. Repeat the same sewing on the other shoulder, making sure that the front piece and the back piece are held together. Now the back facing placed at the right side of the front piece this way. Then make sure it's placed this way. Hold the shoulder properly. Make sure you take your time to do this. Now repeat the same half an inch sewing or joining from that part. Make sure that the 3 pieces are together, are even, right? Then you maintain the same 0.5 or half an inch sewing. Then take your time to do this. Then once you have finished sewing from that direction, you cut off your threads as well. Then you can now cut out at the edge here, cut it out a bit. It will enable you have a relaxed neckline when top stitching or when you turn it over. So cut it out this way, but please don't cut off the line you have sewn. So after you must have done this now, so the next you will do now is to push the facing that was in front to the back, right? Push it to the back, and then you start sewing from here, right? You make sure everything is properly arranged. You make sure everything is properly arranged this way. Then once you have gotten to this stage now, the next thing you will do is to take your time to align the back facing to the back block. Make sure everything is properly considered and taken care of. So now you start sewing from here. The reason I just started there so that I will make sure that the edge is held together as well. Then before you start sewing the side, the down part of the facing, you make sure you draw out any excesses from here, stretch it out, make sure that the back facing and the back neck are corresponding this way, that the back facing and the back neck are corresponding this way. Draw them out and make sure as well the shoulder area they are corresponding as well. At this point you might decide to pin so that you make sure everything is properly taken care of or not off. Then once you have gotten to this stage, you hold your hand, you place your hand firmly, and then you stitch tip to tip, or you sew tip to tip. Then you make sure everything is very much balanced as well. Take your time in doing this. Then make sure that the center line folding of the back facing and the back piece must correspond. Then once you get to the V shape or the center of the back facing, if you did not do your own V shape, just the center is ideal. Then you hold it again, then you position your needle to in that V shape as well, and then you also start from here to start sewing your back piece, right? Make sure everything is properly taken care of or not off. Then draw out the excesses like I said, and then you sew from here. Then once you have finished sewing from here, it's advisable in most cases to top stitch your shoulder. Now the reason for the top stitch is to make sure that the shoulder area is properly balanced, right? So look at the results of what we have been battling with since. Look at how it's coming out. Look at it. Look at how it's coming out. You can see how beautiful the result is already, in as much as we are not yet done. So this is how your outfit should be giving you joy while sewing at each moment, right? So look at the neck area. Look at how fine it is already. And then I'm going to hold here so that this thing will not be pushing too much up. So I'm going to hold it from that original line I held under, so that it will hide the one beneath. So I will be left with this to be dangling. So now, as you can testify how sweet the outfit is already turning out to be. After this now, the next you will do is to top stitch the shoulder if you so wish, and then we progress to the piping stage. So in the shoulder top stitching, I make sure I start from here. And then I make sure the shoulder is properly balanced. Please, your hand must be straight while top stitching, and it must be tip to tip from the back region of the outfit, right? Top stitch from the tip. It should be tip enough, please, very important, and it should be straight. If you know you cannot achieve a straight line, you rather don't top stitch the shoulder, because any error here will be so visible. Then after you must have done this now, you can now push your thread to enter the next shoulder, right? So once you are done with this, this is how the result is coming out. Look at how the result is coming out. You must make sure you take your time to top stitch, very, very important as well. Then once you are done top stitching, the next you will do now is to do your armhole trimming. I believe all of us must have seen previous videos of mine on armhole trimming. Then cut your thread, the one that connected the two shoulder rather. Cut your threads, and then this is the result of the top stitch we have made, or we have done on our outfit. You see how balanced this outfit is looking. So I will still go and iron, even though it's nicely done, or let's say it's already looking nice, but I will say iron before I proceed in taping my neck, and then trim my armhole before I proceed in my sleeve. So I will go and iron now and show you how it's being ironed. Please, while ironing, make sure if you have the iron mesh is a certain product that we use in ironing, whereby you use it to clip on the iron face, so that surface it will not burn or spoil your fabric. But if you don't have iron mesh or whatever it's being called, then please make sure you use a fabric, a certain fabric placed at the shoulder region, where you use your iron to press on top. And in using a fabric, make sure you retain the same fabric you are sewing, so that if there's any color drop, it will not stain the fabric you are making. Make sure you use the same fabric you are sewing, the pieces placed on the region you're going to iron, sprinkle water on it, or use your steam iron and iron properly. The reason for doing this, so that you will not go and burn the hairs of the outfit, whereby after sewing your clothes will look like an already used or worn clothes. These are the tricks in your finishing. It's very important as well. So I'm going to iron now. I will use the same fabric, maybe cut out maybe 4x6, or depend on the size, place on the shoulder area, and then I iron properly. Then after that, I will trim my armhole, and then I will now synchronize my neck, meaning that you have to cross check your neck. If your neck is giving you the same neckline you had in cutting, if it's not giving you the same neckline, please you adjust the neck from the back region. Please don't touch the front aspect of the neck. It's very rare for you to touch the front, except on some cases whereby the neck is too small. You have to readjust both the front and the back. But if you need a little adjustment, please make sure you work it from the back region, so that it will sit properly on your customer's shoulder. So I will go and do this now and come back and show you the result, guys. Alright guys, so now I'm done trimming my armhole. As you can see, the armhole is trimmed, and then I'm done as well cross checking my neck. I've also trimmed my neck. If you notice, the neck at the back is a bit sunken, right? Now the reason for the sunken nature is to enable this neck not to be protruding high at the back. You should at least have an inch inwards, right? Now it depends on your type of neck cutting. So I have also trimmed the sides. I did not touch the depth, the front. I only touched the sides, and then I deepen here a bit. So if you open up the neck, this is how your neck should look like, right? It should give you this curvy effect. Make sure that the two shoulders are balanced as well. So this is how the neck and the back, from the front to back, should be, right? Then after that, the next you will do now is to start piping your neck, or taping. Now I believe you must have as well watched previous videos of how to cut bias. If you have not watched, please try to do so. This was cut in a diagonal form. Diagonal form means angle 45 degrees. So if you can find your way to mark that on your fabric, you now mark 2.5 or 2 inches width of your bias. Then use hemming gum to hem. Now if you see, you are seeing a whitish nature here, so it was folded on both ends and then hemmed under and then folded on top. The one you fold again will be a bit smaller than the one beneath, so that to make sure that once you sew on top, it will catch the one on the right. Then after doing this, now you now come here, fold this way, right, and then insert the flap to be under. Before you start the flap, make sure that the flap is corresponding with the neck measurement. This way it should flush properly. Then you insert the flap underwards, and then you fold across this way. Then you start to pipe your neck. Please make sure that it's properly positioned before you start piping. Very, very important, right? Then after you must have held this way, make sure that the neck is properly tucked in. Don't place it at the tip of the bias. Make sure that the under is properly pushed at the center fold of the bias. Then you fold it upwards this way, and then you start sewing. And make sure you stitch the beginning as well. It's part of your finishing. So all these things I'm telling you now will be the trick to your successful neat folding or finishing of your fabric. Please, all these are very, very important. Then you go through right round that, you go all through the whole position. Make sure you sew tip to tip, right? Take your time to do this. Now the reason I'm showing this as well is in case there's any doubts or any issues, you will be clarified as you progress in the sewing, right? Then you go all through this area and sew. Now don't forget that the piping must be sewn twice, or if you so wish, you can sew it once. It's all your choice, but I like to sew twice. The double sewing helps as well in relaxing your bias. Make sure that it's properly tucked in as well, like I said, right? And then you sew this way. Then when you get to this stage, the bias, you will cut it to be a bit longer by half an inch or thereabouts, so that you'll be able to fold or end it properly. Then you fold this one this way, and then you make sure the edge is properly tucked in as well, and then you sew as shown. Then when you get to this stage, after you must have piped your neck, now the next thing you will do now is to top stitch at the edge of the bias as well. So you also sew, but some persons can decide to leave it at one line sewing. There's still no problem, but I like to top stitch, sometimes have 3 threading. So I'm top stitching from here. Make sure you are sewing the tip. Now this tip as well, like I said, helps to relax your piping or your taping, however you want to call it. It's still the same thing. Then you sew all through. Like I said, go gradually, please. Don't be in a haste. You know, one of the advantages of taking your time to do anything is that you avoid the issues of losing or corrections. So if you take your time, everything will be properly taken into consideration. But if you are in a haste, you might end up not having a perfect result you wish, thereby resulting to losing of your already sewn lines. And the more you lose, the more you waste your time, and then the more the joy of sewing might diminish, as the case may be. So you cut your thread. So now, after you must have piped or taped, you're now going to iron your neck. Now, like I said, while ironing, make sure you place the same fabric on the neck region you iron. The ironing will help the piping to relax effectively. I'll iron and show you the results. Alright guys, so now as you can see, I have finished piping. I did the 3 threading, right? And then look at the results of my ironing. You have ironed. Your piping should relax as this. You should relax this way, right? It should be properly relaxed, both the front and the back. This is the water I use in ironing. You make sure you sprinkle water, place the material on top, and the iron flatly. Look at how relaxed and how neat the pipe material is, or the pipe neck is, right? So now, when you must have finished piping, now you have ironed properly as shown. Now the next thing I'm going to show you is how to do the sleeve turn up, and then I think that will be the end of the video. But then I hope this video must have helped you to get to this stage, and then you can now put your sleeves. If you have a long sleeve, you can put your long sleeve, or however sleeve you have, you can put your sleeve. And then don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Mr_Defined, and subscribe to my YouTube channel at Redefined Clothing. As well, follow me on Facebook with my real name, Ajoko J Justice, and then follow my page on Facebook as well, Redefined. Follow my group on Facebook at Fashion Priest. Now all these things are by handles, and then for those of us that might want to have a personal coaching class, it's still available. You can reach me with my number, right? So thank you guys for watching. I hope to see you in the next video.